Have an oath, and we'll start with allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Courtney and Carrie both let us know they couldn't attend tonight, so they're absent. And I'm not aware of any added agenda items. All right, and then in our packet, we have the minutes from June 5th regular meeting. I had noted to Jessica, I think it was totally just a typo, but under the minutes or for who seconded it, Courtney's name was misspelled to Secarino instead of Secarino. But other than that, I didn't have any other notes on it. The June 5th minutes, I don't know if anybody else does. If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from June 5th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of June 5th as amended.
A second.
All right, so Noreen has made the motion and Heather seconded. Do we have any other discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes. And then the June 26 minutes, we also have.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the June 26th meeting. A second.
All right, so Denise made the motion and Heather seconded to approve the minutes from June 26th. Does anybody have any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes.
Can I just make one comment? Oh, Jessica, you did a great job. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Right, and public participation, it does not appear that we have any public joining us this evening, so I think we're good on that. All right, and then Patrick has included the upcoming meetings and events, and I think you had one other one. You were
Correct.
gonna mention.
When this came out, we had not confirmed, but since this has come out on August 15th, Thursday, from 5:30 to 6:30, we'll have a facilities subcommittee. So we'll put in the calendar, we'll send a calendar invite. Obviously, there'll be an agenda once we get closer to that. But that's an addition again.
5:30, I'm sorry.
Yep, 5:30. Yep.
I apologize, August 15th.
Yes.
Yes. Yep.
The August 14th meeting,
Yes.
I'm not gonna make that.
Okay, I was gonna check if people are, because I now had,
I likely will not be able to.
okay, I'm sorry. No, that's okay. I'm just thinking,
I'm coming off of 10 days of voting. That's the first day off and the next day I have facilities. You're on vacation. I'm on vacation.
all right, so that may need to be, we were kind of working with Justin to try and do that weekend. We didn't do Tuesday because Courtney mentioned that's still voting. But if that's not going to be a good day, because it's our self-review, that's what that meeting is for. And if I now have at least 3 people who probably can't be there, then
Could we do it prior to a meeting in September?
I think it's just that it could have happened before then. That's why we were trying to get it done, but
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think it's important that you have the entire board or close to the entire
Yeah.
board participation. Certainly, I think it would be imperative following the board policy that you review your goals, make sure those are in line before I bring my goals forward. So it's really about that process.
Maybe 28th before the meeting.
Or, I mean, like I can wait till October and bring my goals forward. Typically, I wait till October and November so that I have the beginning of the year test scores too. So if you did it sometime in September, I think as long as it's early to mid-September, that's fine.
Well, I can check with Justin too on what he anticipates and as far as how long it would take. I think we were trying to do it separately, so it wasn't just before a meeting and making for a really long night. And in case there were other like committee meetings before meetings, we sometimes end up with
Stephanie, can I ask, you know, I think I'm a little confused. This meeting, what is the actual purpose of the special meeting?
To do our board self-review and talk about board goals but it's mainly our self-review. I actually need to check with Justin because I think we would talk about, I don't know that we're setting up new goals so much as we're talking about how we did this year with our goals, but I can check with him whether. it
Well,
would
we
be a
were
separate-
setting new goals or
Or
tweaking what
revising
we
or-
have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was part of it last year.
yeah.
So,
So,
yeah.
Kate, I have a question about the process. So will we, each individually, complete the evaluation or the survey that's out there? And then will that be aggregated so that we have that total package?
I actually need to talk to Justin about
Okay.
it. I hadn't had a chance to talk to him
Okay.
about the format yet. That was
Yeah.
one of the things I was gonna
Yeah.
do in the next 2 weeks, but if we're gonna reschedule this, I will definitely talk to
Okay,
him and I can
good.
get more
All right.
information
Thank you.
about how he plans to because he was gonna run the meeting. I can see if we were gonna do like you said, a questionnaire or some kind of rubric for ourselves or like what he was planning on doing in terms of.
Because there is one that there's a survey that board members can, right? That I've seen before, right?
It's in your board policy.
It's in the board
Yeah, it's in
policy.
one of the addendums. I know what Justin did last time was he sent like a self-reflection and everyone completed that prior to coming and
Yeah.
that it was served as a starting point. So I would imagine he'd do
Okay.
something similar.
Right.
Once a date is secured.
Yeah, so we can check on that. I was just trying to check with the subcommittees, but I don't know if there is one before August 28th. If these
Mine
don't-
not being there is causing us to not have a meeting, then I'll.
No, I mean, you're like the third person now, we said, so I don't think it's like,
So then we don't have everybody.
that's what we're saying is it would be better to have more people. If, 3 people can't make it, then we need to do it different. Just that wasn't clear to me when I kind of was trying to gather information from people. And just in terms of these dates, so you wanted to mention also National Night Out that we're gonna have
Correct,
a
yep.
presence.
Yeah, so two parts for August 6th. We will have a tent table. I know myself, Cheryl, and Justin have all confirmed that will be in attendance. I imagine we do have a couple of our administrators, but certainly want to welcome any board members that wanted to join us at our table. I know that members have some other tables and groups that they're participating already, but if anyone wants to join us, we'll be there.
What will we have at the Board of Ed, the school table?
I think pretty much, honestly, we're still organizing, but I would imagine something similar to like what we had last year. Oh, sorry. So we had water bottles flagged up. So we'll see what we have and put together some goodie bags.
No information?
We had, like flyers, but typically that's earlier than our school communication will go out the Friday after. We're still finalizing, but we won't have beginning of the year, communication out. It's a little bit early, for that, but certainly we would be
They're to answer questions.
correct. Yep. We would, be a Q&A, greet people, welcome, say hi to the kids that, we see and we know.
Obstacles are in it.
I think didn't we do that last
Yeah.
year? Oh, I bought them. Now that you say that, I remember that.
We're cutting them with scissors.
Yeah.
That was out of it.
Yeah.
If I can make a recommendation that we maybe not do water bottles, because I don't know about anybody else, but my house is saturated with water bottles. It's one for the garbage. So,
Spend money on popsicles.
yeah, popsicles or consumables or something that's more compostable. We have a recommendation.
The children to your booth.
And then you do want to mention convocation.
Yep. So convocation, certainly want to welcome any board members that, I know, with work, sometimes there'd be a conflict, but if you are available, would like to attend, we would, certainly, appreciate, the attendance and certainly, welcome. The commitment's probably about 8 to estimate based on, past, probably 9:30, possibly earlier, as far as release. It starts with the breakfast. And then we're pretty good, amazingly, getting out of breakfast by 8:30, getting auditorium and taking off the agenda. And certainly it's usually highlighted and finishes with the Teacher of the Year speech.
I went 2 years ago.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
And it was really very good.
Yeah,
I would like to come.
it's really nice.
It's really nice.
So certainly Jessica could take note. If you're not sure yet, you want to email her at a later time, that's fine too. Sounds like Fran.
All right, were there any other ones you want to mention in terms of, are we good?
Everything there.
Yeah, don't hate me, sorry. Let me backtrack. I know we already approved the minutes. I was just double checking my calendar. I was not in attendance for the June 26th one, and it looks like we had an executive session, so I just wanted to bring it up.
Oh,
That was the one that I was the resolution.
I think that my comment is that.
no. All right, so we'll note that Gabby was not here. Thank you. for-
Yeah, sorry, that was very clear.
It's fine. Yeah, Ryan, do we have a financial?
And so in the packet there, ironically, I think almost everyone, but I guess, yeah, it was at the finance subcommittee where we went over it. I don't know if you have any specific questions to go over. If not, maybe during summarize what we went over as well.
At that, okay, that's.
Oh, it's okay.
Oh, there you go, Patrick.
Yeah.
Give Gabby an update.
Might be a
Um. Some of the follow-ups, this more speaks to follow-ups. Basically, Ryan reported that he anticipates there will be little change from the report. There remains 8 open POs, both Sprague and Crack are months behind on their invoicing. We're ahead of schedule in comparison to last fiscal year. Certainly there were some end of the year expenses related to the 35,000 to cut for the CNR Broadbrook gym ceiling. I did put in one of my superintendent updates over the summer. I think it's the only one I've put out so far, that the Broadbrook gym ceiling is scheduled to, that work's going to be done the week before school opens. So that is a positive. 30,000 for the check cut for the legal retainer, and then 30,000 for iReady. That also allowed us to put the high school tutor back in the budget for FY25. And Ryan will be providing 2 board members because there's a request for the backup financial information summarizing the year-end changes. And certainly this will become future practice, especially in which transfers may not be possible with late changes that take place during the month of June. I miss anything there?
I just, high school tutor situation,
Yes.
that happened after our last board meeting. The board finance committee, subcommittee met after that. And we looked at everything and was determined that we could get a high school tutor back for the upcoming year. So that's what he's talking about, the high school.
Yeah.
tutor. Which is awesome.
Yeah, I remember that discussion. It was a good summary.
Thank you. That's-
Anybody have any questions? All right. And then under old business for a vote, I think you were going to speak to this as far as kind of finalizing that question.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously for the FY25 budget, and Ryan, feel free to jump in. But basically, obviously the budget was set by the Board of Finance. It was approved through referendum. Essentially what your vote would do would allocate what Ryan has in the munis report as far as what would be approved for like the account line. So that would be what you'd be voting on. And my understanding, Ryan, is this does include that high school tutor.
It does. Yep. That's kind of what we talked to in the subcommittee is it's basically the same budget that went through the whole budget process. It's just with the updates so that the tutor shows moving forward in the future reports, you'll see that in the news reports.
Had some good news, just talking about, this upcoming school year. We have one teacher, pending that's in the hiring process, but, assuming that goes well, we'll be, as of today, fully staffed. I also shared in that superintendent update, we hired a world language teacher, which is incredibly challenging to find. We have someone that's both experienced and native speaking. And that will allow us to push down Spanish from 5th grade. So certainly a resource without adding anything to the budget. So we're really, excited. Certainly, obviously, what's happening, in one of the districts nearby is unfortunate with the reduction of staff. But to the positive, we've been a beneficiary, from those reductions.
Thank you.
All good stuff.
Patrick, did you reach out to any of the others in the other reducing communities around us?
That one town I have been in contact with.
Yeah, good,
Some of them,
good.
like building
Yeah.
administrations,
Yeah.
administrators I have close relationships with. And I'll say their HR department's been really good too.
Yeah.
Like we had to reach out as far as just where they had them on,
Yeah,
like years
yeah.
of experience,
That's
and they got back to us and they've been supporting like the employees. Certainly they don't want to see
Sure.
growth, but they also want.
Yeah,
That's,
so it's
that's,
good both ways, yeah.
Good.
so.
Yeah, you were looking for a vote on that though, right? Do we
Yep.
have a number that we need to say? Like, is there a specific budget
I
number?
no, I
Just
think
say-
it's more just, yeah.
Just say
Yeah.
that was
report.
approved by referendum and
The report that's in the pack proposed.
Just to set up where the numbers currently stand.
Yep.
I'll make a motion to approve the FY 2025 budget as noted in the packet with the line of 27,344,646.
second. All right, so Heather made the motion and Fran seconded. Any further discussion?
No question. Special ed private tuition. In 23, we spent 512. In 24. It's a weird number. We're projecting 1.25 million. Is that based on who we know, Patrick, or is that based on, is there some assumption in that will get kids?
So we have, we didn't, budget for any contingencies, so there's no contingencies. That being said, I can tell you in talking with Deirdre, there's already been changes. There's going to continue to be changes. We said that's, especially during this time, you're going, families that move in and out, really from now to the middle of September, and we really won't have an accurate picture, unfortunately, by till October 1st, where we are.
All right, a motion has been made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you. All right, new business for discussion. Area school tours. Did you want to do? an
Yeah,
update?
So, this week's been a busy week. We had the tour, South, that was this week, right? South Windsor? Last week, sorry, thank you. So last week we had the tour to South Windsor. It wasn't so much about, the building per se, although it was a beautiful, building, but really that superintendent, Dr. Carter was kind enough to spend quite a bit of time. I want to say about 2 hours time as far as walking, that group, through the process, from beginning to end, as far as how they elicit, community support, the process they went, through, from, developing a plan. Certainly the number of schools they had involved is, much like double what we're doing. So certainly their timeline was longer, and they're just in the completion of that. It was a 10-year plan for them. Today we had a visitation to East Granby. That was more to look at the physical space because their population is relatively close to us. They're a little smaller than us. I want to say they, said their combined, 6 through 12 building was about 520 students, somewhere around there, low 500s. And so we, took a tour of that space, both, a high school principal, and then, there was a shared, assistant principal who splits his time between the two buildings. Really spent quite a bit of time as far as what really works well in that building, what they would definitely do different as far as share spaces. And it was very informative. Now that we have a facilities subcommittee meeting on August 15th, I know Denise and I spoke as far as obviously having that as an agenda item. And also having a conversation with the first selectman on the town side as far as developing and working with the owner's rep, which is CSG, developing certainly like strategy and timeline, and developing a draft. So that's kind of where we are right now. Certainly, I know there's a number of people that participate in the tour. So if you want to share any feedback, knowing that there'll be other opportunities as well, or any thoughts that may be helpful for the ones that are unable to attend, or if anyone has any questions. But certainly, obviously, this group knows this is certainly will be a process, and certainly a lot of ongoing discussion.
I just said East Granby, going to East Granby was really helpful. The principal and the vice principal were very forthcoming as far as, what they were discussing. The other thing that I thought was interesting was the scheduling too. So it wasn't about facilities for me too, it was about how you're moving kids around and how they did that. I thought that was food for thought as we move forward too. So I appreciated that.
Patrick, for arranging those. They were both very helpful as you really said, in different ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very helpful.
Canton's tomorrow, like I said, that one was kind of like a late add-on because they do have a shared building. It was taking a little longer for some of the other ones, so we wanted to make sure. I don't anticipate that one being much different than the one today, but certainly that's open to anyone that wants to attend.
Is that one 11 o'clock too?
10:30.
Is it an older facility or is it?
I'm not quite sure. I'm not really, I know it's a smaller school district. They are bigger than us, but I know it's smaller. And it's the difference with them is they have 2 middle schools. So they have a separate middle school that's a 6 through 8, I believe, and then they have and they're combined. My understanding is they're separate buildings too, with shared common spaces of 7 through 12. So certainly different. I don't know the breakdown for populations. So that's the makeup. I don't know much about it. But just knowing that they were smaller in size. And that they had existing building that served both. Yeah.
Just from those initial visits, did you notice anything like in particular that stood out in terms of the usage of the space compared to our buildings? Because I know that was like one of the biggest issues, like the square footage that we have and how it was too much relative to like our student population. So like
Their classrooms were definitely smaller today than the ones that we saw. The classrooms are definitely smaller. And they actually have an interesting, and he said they would change this or one of the administrators said they wouldn't do it this way if they were planning a building. But they don't really have interior courtyards, and some of their admin or other things were on the outside. So their classrooms were like on the inside of a hallway. They have no window in a lot of classrooms. And so it's kind of odd. Yeah. And some of them, they said at one point it was more of an open concept. And so there would be like 3 classrooms without walls in between them. But now they put walls in between them, but then there's like doorways in between the classrooms and to the hallway, which they said isn't the best for security either in terms of like a kid could get through. Or someone.
And there's you could imagine there could be some disruption in the learning because you have to go through a classroom to get to a classroom or something. So like you could have a class in place where they have to go through that class to get to the class.
But it was built in the 50s or 60s.
He said it was a 70-year-old building where they renovated to new 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it had some challenging spaces, but
Yeah.
it did have, I thought it was eye-opening, the amount of things that they could do for shared
Correct.
pieces.
Yeah.
And how they, were able to work that out. So I think I found it very interesting.
So for example, they said they had a shared art room because they had one large art room, but like the way their schedule was, they could have middle school students and high school students use it at different times. So they didn't have two separate art
Yeah,
rooms.
and I can tell you for us, that
But-
like we have, like, I mean, if you go in our middle school art room, that room's used. Like, we wouldn't be able to do that, but like one of the things they share they would do, which would make sense, is like a shared media and library,
They
like
said they would do that.
like where it would be like a hub. Certainly they share the auditorium.
Yeah, and music they talked about too. I
Yeah,
think,
but
like
then
the
their
band
music
class.
participation, you can tell, is lower than ours.
Yeah.
Really?
Um, but then there's other areas where I think it'd be worth discussion where it's different needs, or different interests, where I think where there's some things where we could combine where they can't and vice versa.
Yeah.
But at least, it allows for some brainstorming and some opportunity.
And they have quite a few gyms because they had newer gyms
Yeah.
built, but then they had older gyms that were already there.
I mean, our high school has 2 gyms.
So, yeah, they have like 4 gyms, right? Like, 'cause we saw 2 older,
3, right?
No,
we saw the
it's
old
three.
high school, the old middle school, and then the 2, maybe it was 3, okay.
It's the new one.
Yeah.
But I found it interesting, kind of hard to tell about kids there, that you can have buildings together, but
Yeah.
separated.
Yep.
Yeah.
There is a means of doing it. And it has absolutely nothing to do with what we're doing, but I'm just fascinated by the fact that they don't have a food program.
Yeah, it's a
They
brown
do not
bag.
have a cafeteria.
Yeah.
They don't have a food program.
Wait, what?
Most students bring their
One
own
of the
lunch.
only brown bag lunch communities like in the state.
So they have a commons where kids can sit at tables and eat, but they don't have a kitchen.
They don't have a kitchen. The
Interesting.
PTO is doing some kind of
Some kind.
fundraiser where they
Ordering
order
meals or
orders and get
something.
kids, but most of the kids bring their lunch. They don't have.
Yeah.
They
I
have no
didn't think they did
cafeteria
that.
staff. They
Yeah.
have,
Very interesting.
yeah, I was just like,
I will never fly here.
I mean, we're
And what-
60%
what-
free,
yeah.
we're
Well,
just lunch.
Yeah,
When
they
we
don't
asked them
have-
what they do for free and reduced lunch, they said, we don't have any. No. Yeah, it's like, what? But the other thing I thought was interesting too is, and so that all kids are coming at the same time and leaving at the same time. So it's their middle school and their high school. So the schedule was, but the other thing that I thought was kind of interesting is, and to think about the common areas, how kids get back and forth. So they had, because they had so many, they had hallways that would seem complicated. to
Oh,
me.
yeah.
You
I
know,
agree.
getting the kids from this hallway to the classroom, and it sounded like it took a lot of time.
But yeah, that sounds like a major discussion.
So it sounded, like get kids together, a teacher kind of gets kids all lined up in the middle school, gets them before they. It sounded to me like,
But when we
I
were in the
would be
gym,
more
I know
aware of
because the gym was warm, some people stepped out, but
yeah.
when we were in the gym, the high school principal said, they have 3 minutes for passing time and that's more than enough time. And
Yeah,
they get to,
yeah. And they
class.
have, some have to go downstairs and upstairs.
Yeah, because there was 2 floors to the building.
Yeah.
Even for the teachers to go and get the kids, because it sounded like teachers went to get kids.
For certain
In the middle
things, I
school.
think he said,
I
but
think
not
that
for
was
that
most-
many, I
yeah.
think.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
There was a teacher that worked, like, that covered both, and they said if they were on one side, then they would have to go get the kids and bring them. There was like one shared hallway, but they did say mostly, like, the high school kids stay on one side and the elementary, except for those other shared spaces, like the auditorium, and the middle school kids and the high school kids are pretty separated, mostly.
But I think on the bus.
Yeah, but not on the bus.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
They share buses.
Yeah, they share buses.
Yeah.
That's what she said, not.
But,
on the
oh,
bus.
oh,
We're
yeah,
not putting
right.
fifth graders with 12th graders. We couldn't sell them. I don't think we
No, I
can sell
agree.
them. But,
They gave a lot of food for thought for
Yeah.
further discussion.
and we're starting fresh.
Yeah.
Where when they renovated, they didn't have the windows thing, I mean, we now think from theirs, from seeing what they had, we know we wouldn't want to be doing that.
I mean,
Yeah,
I mean, the other part too was 20 years ago. I mean, priorities for education were much different too.
And security is so much different too.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it was very enlightening, both tours. Any other questions you can think of? I know it's hard to think of them when you weren't actually
Yeah,
there, Rose, or anything else that, or Heather.
no, I'm just trying to think of like stuff that was brought up during the, like the town hall sessions and
Mhm.
concerns. Sounds interesting. And I'd be curious to hear, you know, how the next one goes as well.
All right.
So board policy review, this is not for vote. Just to give a little background, the first reading for the 3000s, that has gone through the finance subcommittee as well as BPR. That's pretty close to a final, version. And then, the 4000s, I would tell you, it's a little unorthodox as far as bringing it forward to the full board. But as we're doing this major overhaul with our policies, and the 4000s policies is over 150 pages. We want to get earlier to the board. So what we're requesting is that, over the next 2 weeks, if you could take a look at it and provide any feedback, to Justin, by the middle of, August, that would be great. Again, we're, as a reminder, because of, the way, Cave organize their policies versus Shipman and Goodwin. You may have a policy with Shipman and Goodwin that was in the 1000s, but then with, Cave, it was in the 9000s. So rather than have bringing or approving, the policies series by series, we're bringing the first reading to the board, series by series, but we're going to do the approval process in one, so that we don't put ourselves in a position where we have like two policies that contradict each other in different sections, so that the policies work together. Believe it or not, the Shipman Goodwin, it's a significant reduction in pages from the Cave with the 150. So it is streamlining the process, but that being said, obviously it still is a tremendous amount of work, and the policies that are the longest are the 4000s and 5000s. So once we get through the 4000s and 5000s, it will get a little easier, and I would imagine the 9000s, because it's board bylaws, even though they're not longer in nature, based on the content, there would probably be some time spent on those. So I don't know if there's any questions or feedback now. And again, obviously recognizing that you need time to review it, and then, you know, on your own time, send that feedback directly to Justin.
If I could just ask if you guys do have feedback, just if you could copy me on it, because I'd like to see if you guys have any questions. If they were similar to some of the questions that we had raised ourselves. And then also for those of us that are on the committee, don't forget to get your questions in on the half the 5000 series until before our next meeting.
What's on that committee?
I was just thinking, Fran.
I think Courtney is now.
There she was.
No,
she's-
yeah.
Oh,
Andy.
okay. Yeah, that's right. Courtney switched to curriculum, I forgot. All right, were there any questions right now in terms of that, or any questions about the process? And I think, what were you saying, Heather, the next?
Yeah.
Page 216 has, which is actually our next thing, is the subcommittee meetings, but it looks like it would be September 18th. Okay. All right, so the next thing on new business for discussion on page 216 of your packet that is printed here is the subcommittee meeting calendar from September through December. So this is how we usually do it, because what we've set our meetings through. And then when we approve the board meeting schedule in
It's your
like
meeting,
November.
it's your, yeah, per policy, and I believe charter, you have to, it's the first meeting in November.
So at that point, then we would look at the subcommittee meetings for the next, series, like through June or July, depending on how those fall. So this is September through December.
Yep, so it corresponds and matches up with BOE regular meeting schedule.
You need to vote.
No. Certainly if there's any questions, we can answer.
Right after.
I will, yeah, the September 11th, finance as a committee or that our meetings that.
September 11th.
Yeah, I think our meeting is.
Yeah, we do have a meeting that night. So you won't be.
No, I'll be on vacation. I was not on my laptop.
Again, Jessica and Patrick, I appreciate your work on this and kind of getting these set up and determined, even though I know we had said kind of, you know, this one meets the first or this one meets the third or whatever it is of the weeks. This is really helpful in terms of having this outlined for people, I think, and then people can put stuff on their calendar and stuff. And so it's really helpful as well as having, you know, the invitations coming out electronically. So I do appreciate the work that goes into that. And there is one note here, there's an asterisk for November 26th, that meeting was moved to a Tuesday night due to Thanksgiving. So Thanksgiving, meeting the week of Thanksgiving. Is that what that means?
We consistently have that matches up to the board meeting. So that November 26th, you have a board meeting at 7.
Okay. So just as a note on that one. All right, any other questions or comments about the subcommittee meeting schedule? And then new business, we have a number of job descriptions.
Yeah, I can speak to it a little bit. I mentioned this during miscellaneous in the finance subcommittee. Just to be clear, these are not new positions, so it's not adding people to it, but they're rather updates to reflect the current job responsibilities. Certainly, some of that is because it's been quite some time, and the job descriptions have become somewhat antiquated, and some of that has to do with just change of leadership under myself versus previous administration. Certainly, I can answer any questions if there's any questions regarding the job descriptions.
I have one.
Yes.
Well, I have a couple, but the data specialist, I thought it was all outsourced.
So IT is completely outsourced. What the data specialist does is, so the previous title was like webmaster, which was a really poor title because it was probably about 5 to 10% of what this person does. But the bulk of it is they're responsible for our student information systems. I can tell you the title may not sound like a lot, but it's a tremendous amount of work because you are involved with all our state reporting. So based on that data, that's how they determine your per pupil expenditures, eligibility for grants, free and reduced lunch. So anything that's based on demographics, anything that's based on like your special needs populations, like essentially like all your systems, all your data systems. Certainly this person serves as kind of like our guru for Power School. He was instrumental as far as working with in collaboration with IT. But as far as transitioning to from Rediker to Power School, works with the syncing, like any of our, like, so for example, like syncing, essentially like if we had, if we have different systems, you want them to speak to each other so that you're not entering the student data multiple times. Try and come up with examples, but none are coming to mind as far as good ones, but he'll make sure the systems sync together and they talk to each other. So if you update like essentially Power School, that will filter into like your special ed database, or it'll filter into like your grade book, or like iReady, so that all the systems talk to each other.
Was it like a one man?
One person.
There's one, the department is IT, but it's just one person.
Yeah, I will tell you, it's really separate from IT. I mean, Yeah, it's really about all student data that the person reports directly to me. I can tell you because of some of like the syncing with some of our curriculum. He works closely with Daryl sometimes on certain projects as far as making sure systems talk to each other. But I mean, Danny's here. I don't know how often you guys really interact with like Freddie at work. I mean, there's some, but
Quite a lot, I think.
all right, so maybe more.
Yeah.
But we already have the first.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It's not, yeah, it's,
I mean, that's
yeah.
mandated reporting, which
Yes.
is huge. If that doesn't get in.
And this is reflecting what the person's doing.
Now,
It's just,
yeah.
now, it's just an updated,
Yep.
a job description that better reflects what they're currently doing.
correct. Yeah, it's not a new job. It's a job that's been in the district since I've been here. Well, certainly it's a different job title. It certainly reflects really what the work the person's actually doing.
Do any of these job descriptions cause you to have to increase the salaries because of the change in this, in the job descriptions?
Maybe, there was a bump, with, the assistant superintendent, because we did add some, personnel, responsibilities. If you look, there's a, like 3 or 4 bullets, regarding personnel. However, there was no addition to like the overall budget because as we restructured HR, payroll, accounts payable, it was more about, shifting where the compensation was coming from.
So that's the only one that caused an increase in salary?
Correct. Yeah, there wasn't, I mean, year to year, people get salary increases.
Yeah, but sometimes you do a job description and
Yeah.
and you realize it's much high, the responsibility is much higher. And they say, well, if this is really what I'm doing, then I deserve more. There's none of that kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, some of that had already taken place in the past, but it was driven more by market value. So like, data specialist is like a perfect example, but, that it wasn't from what was this previous year to this year, there wasn't a significant increase. But in past years, there have been decent, increase just based on market.
Are any of these positions in contracts? Or are they all,
They're all,
standing?
the only one that's part of a collective bargaining would be, safe school climate and equity coordinator. Everyone else is.
Everyone else?
Yep. Correct.
Patrick, are any other positions, are there any other job descriptions that need updating?
Yes,
I'm thinking HR, does that need updating?
we're taking a look at HR because we're shifting back to an HR manager, not director. We updated the director one,
Okay.
but we're going to a previous model. So I'm hopeful that, the existing job description matches up because it's, the old Lori Slate model of, HR and payroll being combined, and Lori did that for 35 years.
So
So
that hope that, yeah.
so I would hope that job description is pretty,
Yeah.
reflective of the work. Otherwise, I mean, there's some questions there, I guess.
Okay. Are there any others good things?
No, I mean, I'm sure there are, but there's nothing that comes immediately to mind.
And these are under new business per vote. Do they need to be each done separately in terms of approving job
I believe
descriptions?
so, as long as there aren't, if there was any, as long as they're all going to be approved, then you can do it as one lump.
So can we go to the Director of Operations and Communications? That's a new title, correct?
Correct, correct.
So is it a lot more responsibility?
So, and speaking specifically to that, I mean, that was a new job, like this year. So we had a job description, but now going through, it for the year, really, essentially, updating the job description to reflect the work that took place and the expectations with. So I can tell you for myself, that was a learning process for myself. And so part of the updates have to do with like, like my determination as far as the needs and expectations going forward. Certainly there's some additional responsibilities, but then there's some reshifting responsibilities as well too.
So this is a grant funded position,
Yep.
but it looks like a permanent position. So what happens-
Well, a lot of, we have a lot of grant funded positions that are permanent positions.
Yeah, you
Yep.
just kind of put that disclaimer on there, right? As far as grant funded, you put a disclaimer on for grant funded positions.
I mean, our staff are well aware, but like, I mean, we typically don't, I mean, because you would still have the job description, whether you choose to like employ, that's, and our contracts are year to year.
Right. But it
So
is
we
a-
wouldn't read, like, if we didn't have the funding for a position, especially if something was grant funded, not just for any grant funded position, we just wouldn't renew it, the next year if it was a.
so when hiring, I mean, this is just from my perspective, it was grant funded, a lot of stuff that it was grant funded, and so when
And there's two
we made
business-
sure, and it was in there, there's just one little statement. So that if you had to go back and you had to say to people, you know, you remember, this is what your job description was. I just, and it's based on, you know, I can't remember the exact wording, but, you know, funding from a particular grant or funding, you didn't have to say what grant, just that it was
I
based
mean,
on
out of these five, two of the positions are actually, grant and revenue, funded.
the last two.
Yes, the last two are.
The only
Well,
other,
like we have reading teachers too. I mean, that title, I mean, we have
are
several.
they totally aware they're grant funded? Like if the funding didn't come in, that position would be eliminated. Unless we decided to somehow fund it in another way, correct?
I mean, are the people aware? Yes. I mean, I will say, I mean, we also express because we want to keep our talent too, that we express that we're not foreseeing any, like, we're not in jeopardy of losing the grant funding or the revenue. Certainly, if that was the case, then we'd be having those conversations. So a perfect example was like the Art Besser, grants. Like we knew that, ESSER grants were short term.
Yeah.
Like those people that were hired were saying this is a 3-year grant.
Okay.
Certainly, like we're collecting data. If the data suggests that like it's required longer, you know, that's something we will advocate. But obviously, they knew that there was no guarantee. So like those conversations are stated like during interviews. But you know, with some certainty, like our title grants, I mean, they are entitlement grants. So like a reading teacher, for example, like I'll use that as an example. Like we have a pretty good certainty that funding will be.
Continue, right, but some of it, yeah,
Yep.
okay. The only, and I did kind of express this, and I don't know what it means is, but for the Safe Schools, Climate and Equity, I mean, I would, if it's possible, without any kind of difficulty, I would put, rather than a coordinator or director, when I look at the qualifications, that are needed, those are the same, if not higher, than the other director that we have in here right now. So,
I mean, I can tell you, I would be in support of that. We went back and forth.
Yeah.
I would just ask if that's like what the full board feels like. I would just ask that the vote reflect the revision to change it from coordinator to director.
so I'll make a motion that we take a look at this. I can do this right now, so that I would make a motion that the position title that is currently Safe Schools, Climate and Equity Coordinator be revised to reflect Safe Schools, Climate and Equity Director.
So do we want that as a separate motion just to do that one, to change the title and then vote on the other?
Have to do that one.
Yes, so I
Yeah.
would do that first and then if everyone.
And the other ones? Okay, all right, so there's a motion. Do we have a second? All right, so Gabby seconded it. Any further discussion about changing that title from Safe School Climate and Equity Coordinator to Director?
Patrick, you had mentioned you had a conversation about whether to do, what was your reasoning to keep the job title coordinator?
Yeah, so I had to do with collective bargaining, but I think I'll be okay with that.
All right, is there any further discussion? So motion has been
I'm sorry, we're just voting on the.
just on the
change of-
change of the title. So a motion has been made and seconded on changing the title of the job description to Safe School Climate and Equity Director. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion passes. Okay, and then I would entertain a motion to approve the 5 job descriptions as presented, if that's how we want to go ahead and make
The one revision.
with the revision, yes, as noted.
I have a question. The assistant superintendent. There's a disclaimer on the back, on the last page about the information contained in this based on the American Disabilities Act, blah, 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 blah. That's not on any of the others. It's on page 220. It's that very last. The disclaimer about the American Disabilities Act. But it's not on the others, and I don't know if it needs to be.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Some of them,
Yeah, I can tell you what,
I don't know if it needs.
why I believe this is from is because, like when we updated this, we worked off like the initial, so this one had it, the other ones didn't. So when we looked at it, didn't see any reason to remove it or change it.
Did we add it just as a standard disclaimer to all of them?
Yeah, I think there's no harm in doing that. I think it's a very good point.
It also covers the additional duties that are performed by this individual.
Yeah, that part is in, and yeah, that other duties can be assigned, so that is in other places, but, the rest of it is not.
Make a motion. Make a motion to approve job descriptions for the assistant superintendent, the administrative assistant to the superintendent, the data specialist, and the director of operations and communications with the ADA disclaimer information included on all.
We also need the Safe School Climate and Equity Director. We just approved the title.
The director.
So for all 5 of them with the ADA information included on all 5 of those, as it is stated on the first one. All right, do we have a second? All right, so, Noreen made the motion, did you second it? All in favor? Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you, everybody, and thanks for that.
Thank you.
Noreen. Appreciate that. Okay, and next on the agenda, we have liaison and subcommittee reports. We've kind of already talked about finance and facilities, I think. And honestly, with policy, we've kind of talked about, yes, but I mean, you had just said you want to remind people to read.
The packet for section, the 5,000 series, I think it's just half of it.
All right, so, did you have anything else for finance, sorry, and besides what we've already discussed? Okay, and for, facilities, we kind of talked about the tours. Was there anything else?
That really is what we've accomplished in the last month. Since we last met.
Anything else for facilities?
I think we covered it. I don't, we haven't had a BPR since our, last meeting. I mean, we already covered it as far as what's next. We haven't had an athletic, council since, June. And curriculum, I don't know if there's been curriculum or not offhand.
I think so. The only other thing I was gonna say, I guess, about athletic council, just because this kind of came up in between meetings. Noreen, did you want to mention anything about the indoor soccer, or is that gonna come up at a different time? You had said that was discussed with that committee, but I hadn't heard about it previously.
Well, it hasn't, it's not gonna happen right now, but, we have had conversations about attempting to try to get an after-school program going here at the Broadbrook School. Specifically, we kind of focused on soccer. We had done a survey, which I think we brought here at one point. They surveyed the parents about would you participate in after-school activities at Broadbrook School? If you would, which ones would they be? What is your reason for not having your kids engaged in these programs, currently? We got a really good response. In 4 days, we got like 100 and some odd responses. The majority of which were very interested in having after school programming. Part of the reason for the cost is prohibited sometimes, and the time. You know, parents trying to get to the kids out of school, home, fed, and get them to the soccer field for 5:30 in the afternoon on a Tuesday night. So we were looking to possibly have a soccer program in the back here. We have the bodies, the children are here, and we have fields.
So it would be outdoor, not
It would
indoor.
be-
I guess I misunderstood that.
No, yeah.
Would you be coordinating that with, the soccer program in town? Because you'd be taking, because they're currently, they're skeleton crew at this point.
Right, which is partially why we thought of it.
Yeah.
Because
And
the
support.
problem is they're, like right now, they're having a hard time getting a third and fourth grade girls
Yeah.
soccer team. So part of it came about because of that declining enrollment was that, when like my kids were little, my God, there were hundreds of people
Everybody
playing
played,
soccer.
yeah.
Everybody did. You had stay-at-home parents who had the ability to do it. And you know, we no longer have Little League in our town, and that's partially the same issue. Part of it came up because last year we did not have a soccer team at the middle school. And as time progresses, it discontinues. We could very well be looking at limited high school sports. So the thought was to try to get a program here. Patrick and I met with we had a phone call with the futsal people.
Yeah, and that came from a recommendation from both, Melissa Maltese and Joe Unsworth, who, Dean, our AD, had been in contact, who runs, one of the youth soccer, organizations in town. So, that's where the recommendation came from, both of them.
And it all kind of came together late. It was literally, I don't even remember, Patrick, when we talked to him, it was pushing the end of it was the end of July, it was in July. So the thought was we were gonna try to, there's a cost of about $10,000 in order to do the program 2 days a week, one for it was K through 2, and then 3 and 4.
Yeah, it was K through 4 total, how the breakup
Right, and
was.
then
Yeah.
how it got broke up. One would be one day, one would be the other day. And then our hope is to possibly get parents to volunteer to come on the weekends and do games with the kids. So it's basically skills. It's teaching these kids skills that they're not getting now. They're, unfortunately, we weren't able to get it together on time to start it, but it's gonna be, we'll talk about it again at our first meeting in September, in hopes that perhaps we can do it in the spring. I knew we did not have the money for it. I have spoke with Jason, who's very supportive of it. I spoke to a couple people on the board of finance on the side. They were supportive of it in trying to get them to give us the money as a pilot test, to test it to see what happens. Unfortunately, we couldn't get it together, but we'll discuss it some more.
So
And
maybe,
what's kind of the future look in terms of to have after school sports at Broadbrook, or is this just kind of a club, like you say, a skills thing in terms of?
I think it's more, I think the intent right now is the skills thing to try to build up. I think part of it is if you can get some of the kindergarten and first graders to get out there and actually do it, and then after school activity and say, hey, I really love this, then maybe their parents are more willing to get them into the youth program. But like right now, they're struggling to get a soccer team for kids in this age group. And if you don't start them at some point, it's,
It's tougher, yeah.
it will very well go away. And, so that was the intent of it. We still have a lot of things to talk about. We talked briefly about baseball because we also have that problem. We have the same problem with baseball. We don't have Little League in our town. Last year, the kids can go to Ellington. I'm not sure about the boys, but last year there were 5 girls from East Windsor who went for softball. 5 small children learning how to play softball. It's not going to bode well for us having a softball team at our high school 8 years from now. Because if you're not getting them to do it when they're little, you know, there's not a lot of freshman girls who are going to say, sure, I'll be a catcher. No problem. So that's kind of what we're looking at. And we kind of started late and then it came together late, but our first meeting's in September, so hopefully we'll be able to get it kind of more brought together, but that's the intent.
Denise, did you have another question?
Yeah. So Noreen, are you thinking that you would do it in the spring?
Possibly,
If you miss the fall?
possibly, we'll have to talk about that. If we can maybe do one in the spring, that might be a good opportunity to get kids who aren't doing it, to maybe get them jumped off to the youth program that starts in the fall.
So also, who would be running the after-school portion? Would it be somebody that we would hire? Would it be the gym teacher?
No, it would be high, futsal would do it. It's an outside agency that comes and takes
So
care of
also
it.
not-
So you would be taking, so it'd be, that's what the parents would pay
Yeah,
for this.
there was some equipment costs for that, as far as soccer balls
Yeah.
and some other things, but the primary cost is the organization you're paying to run it all.
Well, Betsy, that was the question at one point. Would the parents be paying or would
Right.
we put it in the budget somehow and we would pay it? That was why it came up to
Oh,
me,
I see.
is that we
Okay.
were gonna ask.
The conversation was really about securing funding as a pilot and then seeing how successful it was
Oh,
with
okay.
the interest.
All right,
And
I see.
then determining, like,
Okay.
is there value to continue and then further to discuss. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Norman.
No, that was exactly it.
What's the reason why Park and Rec don't want to do it themselves and put it on after school and absorb the cost? My concern is we don't have sports here. And the minute we start doing something like that and we have to take it away, that's an issue.
That's true.
I'm not supportive of doing something.
You look at it from 2 sides, you know, if we have to take it away or we determine that it's a valid, useful educational purpose for our kids in this school and we figure out a way to pay for it.
I think I have
That's-
seen Parks and Recs had tried to put that out a few years.
Yeah,
But
I
if they do it
think,
after school here, then the time frame, which is what they're talking about, is why
Works better.
parents don't
Maybe more
necessarily bring in there.
attractive.
At least
Yeah.
they're handling it and then they can start facilitating the kids through their program and they increase their own numbers.
right. They're, because Park and Rec doesn't do youth sports in town.
Yeah.
It's done by youth sports. They help them. Everybody, I think everybody's intent is to help each other. But I mean, it came up in our meetings because we absolutely have declining enrollment.
Mhm.
You know, not to have soccer at the middle school does not bode well for having soccer at the high school.
Yeah, but at the same time, we've never had soccer really at the middle school. And we had, but I hear you. Yeah, we had the youth soccer and that is falling off because my son couldn't find a team to play on for a couple of years. So, no, I agree with you, but I don't want to just say that it's because we don't have youth soccer at the minute, just interest in anything outside of.
Mhm.
And part of that could be part of it as well, Fran, is to try to get these kids from,
So,
go outside, go
Yeah.
there and play.
Yeah.
Don't go home, don't get on the bus and go home as a fourth grader and sit there by yourself.
right.
But again, we started tossing it around and we tried to pull it together. I mean, for me personally, we're not big sports people. I'm not a sports person at all, but, you know, I think for East Windsor kids to see how things have declined and to see how they are just not engaged in group activities. They're not engaged in things that are good for kids. If we can come up with a way to try to, you know, move that along. Worth a shot.
Was there an after-school running program at the elementary school?
They run that. So, there's actually, information that's already gone out to parents as far as mileage club. It runs monthly. It's, very popular.
So who coordinated that?
The gym teacher.
The gym teacher. Yep.
They have mileage club up for recess. The kids can go out, they have
Yeah.
cars.
If somebody comes and
Yeah,
runs
they have
it, you have to.
Oh, but it's not
volunteer
after
to do it.
school.
No, they
and
have
then they
one
do
that's after. school.
once a month.
Yeah, once.
Last night,
Oh, okay.
last night was the first mileage club of this year.
Yeah.
And,
Really?
yeah, special
So they do
summertime.
it in the
version.
summer.
So once a month, it's family mileage night where people come with their kids. And in the winter, we run around the building, which is just a thrilling thing for kids because they get to run around
They
the
play the
building.
music on there, so there's, so throughout the building.
Run in the hallways.
If nobody's yelling at them for running down that. And then in the spring and fall, she does it outside.
Very well
I
attended.
think
Very well.
the way to coordinate
Yeah.
another group in town to come during lunch or during recesses and, you know, whether there's a,
Yeah, recess isn't long enough. It'd be, other,
well, because I've gone, you know, if you got somebody to come and do it, you sit out there and.
I mean, the other challenge too is, I mean, there's a lot of research that supports free play versus
Yeah.
structured.
Yeah.
Because their day throughout the whole day is structured, and then
Yeah.
like that 1 30-minute block they have for recess.
Yeah, that's
where
true
they,
too.
That's a really
Yeah.
good point, yeah. Let the kids do their own thing kind of for those, yeah.
All right, I just wanted to kind of get an update and see where that was at, because I wasn't sure.
Talk about it in September, and see where we go, along with many other things. It's not the only thing we talked about at that athletic committee. We talked about high school stuff and like, what does Dean do?
That committee is you, Courtney, and Carrie.
Yes.
if I attend, Dean attends.
Dean is
The athletic
athletic
director.
director.
Justin can't come.
He came for the survey, because he,
Melissa has come.
yeah, Melissa, she's come pretty regularly.
Are there any other updates with the track? I know you had sent out an email somewhat recently.
Yes and no. So we will have an update by the end of this week. Joe Sauerhofer's scheduled to meet, with, and Hinding, is that who's doing? Whoever the track construction people are, he's meeting with that group as far as, like start date and estimated, time for completion. So we anticipate having, when they're going to start, along with what's the turnaround time, by the end of this week.
So we are likely anticipating that we'll have to bus the kids over to Scout Hall for games.
There'll be some disruption to the soccer, season, whether it's on the front end or the back end. It's really, so we do have plans. I'm a little hesitant to, share because we haven't messaged it to those teams, but those conversations have taken place. We do have arrangements for practice. We do have a plan in place, but certainly we'll provide that. But we need a little bit more information. One, when are they starting? Then what's the turnaround time? Because it could look different if they start next week versus like if they're talking like starting October 1st. We anticipate that they're going to start relatively soon.
Okay.
But we don't have that final confirmation yet.
Can you elaborate on what the delay is? I mean, because they signed off on that proposal.
No, that's so we had the vote
Yeah,
But then the contract, then it had to go to the actual
Right.
contract, and then they had to, like, then it had to go to the first selectman to, vote on it.
that was early July, I think they
Was
voted
it?
on it. I think it's either that or.
And it was after the week of the 4th. I know there was some talk about having it before, but I know it was after that week.
The weeks are blending.
Yeah.
They are.
It was the second week.
It's July's contract actually.
Yes, yeah.
So how is Joe Sauerhoff involved in a school project? I don't understand that.
Wouldn't it be Kyle?
I mean, certainly like he's involved as well too, but, I mean, since I've been here, Joe, and when we've worked with the town has been kind of like liaison, for those types of projects.
What types are those? Outside or
Yeah, like,
or major? Or
yeah, like, I
don't
mean,
know
like,
which-
like the roof, I mean, when I wasn't superintendent at the time, but he had a big part as far as, the replacement of the roofs at that time too.
All right. Were there any other liaison or subcommittee updates or reports?
It's summer, so.
I think that covered quite a bit. All right, again, public participation. We don't have any public. That screen just kind of go. We're still recording.
Right, I don't have a screen.
All right. Did we have any other miscellaneous? that
I don't have
You had?
Actually, Miss Lang.
Yes.
So I know that we're doing the Broderick Gym feeling in August.
Right.
What was determined? Are we doing down? Did they do the testing? So are they taking the whole thing down and just leaving it?
They
there,
won't,
or-
we won't know that until they remove it to see if, until they,
Oh, so they didn't do the testing yet? I
no.
thought they were testing it.
I don't believe they
Like a
can
corner or
taste it. Yeah, I don't believe they can do that based on my understanding of the work and my conversation with Kyle is they're going to have to remove it, really get in there. And they're thinking they won't have to put a drop ceiling in because if you look on, apparently what's been reported is if you look on the other side of the stage, that ceiling's not there on the other side. So you can actually see.
Oh,
So they're thinking it's going to be pretty similar when they remove it, but they won't know until they really, and is that consistent all the way through for the length and width of the school? So certainly that would reduce the overall cost, but we have, based on what we put in CNR from last year, this year, along with capital, we have enough to cover what the estimated cost is for worst case scenario. So we're hoping that obviously it would be less than that. So should we have to put in a drop ceiling, we do have the funds to do it.
What's the total cost? Like say the worst case scenario.
I believe it was around 100 to 110, Ryan, somewhere around.
That was.
Okay, maybe closer to 130. So, yeah, I thought it was closer to 110, but I could be. Double check.
Thank you.
All right. Any other miscellaneous? All right, you had a couple pieces of correspondence.
Yep, only thing I can speak to the PDAC approval, that was the teacher eval system that Daryl presented about a month or more ago. So that did go to the state and we have received approval. So certainly appreciate the work in that committee doing. And then number 2 there, and Aaron Barraza, certainly proud. She was recognized nationally for her work in the HR support and support role. Certainly, obviously, we feel good about her moving forward in the HR manager role.
Yeah, I think we've reported in the past one, so she won for Connecticut for CAS fund. And then that kicked her into the running for national, so now. But the American Association of School Personnel, yeah. So then there's like the 2 selected, I think the other one was in like Illinois. So she was one of the 2 selected and actually got invited to Seattle
Nice.
to win an award for nationally, so we're pretty excited about that.
Are they getting Center to Seattle?
They are not funding it. We haven't figured out yet exactly how that all works, but fortunately they don't pay for the plane ticket.
I have a question. Who's Nicole Damiata, the Director of Human Resources at East Windsor Public
She's
Schools?
not, it's not that, it's an error. I think they sent the corrected version since that one out.
Okay, I was like, confused.
Oh, yeah, Karen sent it today. Did she send?
There was a corrected version, that was an error. No, we don't have that person.
So who nominated her? Because that's what says nominated her.
Yeah, it says you were nominated by Nicole Damiata.
Oh, that person exists, she's not the HR person for East Windsor.
They saw somebody else's name. got in there.
All right. There's nothing further. I will take a motion to adjourn. Right, Denise made the motion, Heather seconded it. All in favor? Right, we are adjourned at 8:19. Thank you very much.